Shall we move on then to This Is England, Drew?
Yes. In an unidentified Midlands town in 1983, 12-year-old Sean, Thomas Turgis, is struggling. He seems to have no friends, is bullied at school, and is grieving the loss of his father, a soldier who died in the Falklands War. A chance encounter on the way home from school one day brings him a group of friends, in the shape of a disparate group of skinheads led by the adult Woody. The group, Woody in particular, are enamoured of Sean's spunk and attitude, and they take him under their collective wing, turning him into a skin-headed miniature, and with only the minimum of patronisation. Sean begins to flourish with this new group of peers, but the fun times end and make way for something much, much darker with the unexpected arrival of Stephen Graham's Combo. Recently released from prison, another skinhead, but this time of the type most associated with the National Front and British National Party in the 1980s. Combo's behaviour and polemic splits the group, with some, Sean included, being swayed by his nationalist swill and ideas of what England is or what England should be, and those that remain with Combo partaking in such wholesome group activities as attending National Front meetings and terrorising South Asian shopkeepers with machetes. Sean grows up a lot in a very short space of time and receives quite the education around Combo, but he learns the truth about such people in a shocking scene in which a switch seems to flick inside of Combo and he violently attacks the one black member of Woody's skinhead group. After this, Shane Meadows reminds us that Sean is still only a child. Wiser, no longer innocent, but a child, and not irreversibly sullied. The film ends, in a nod to the end of Francois Truffaut's The 400 Blows, with Sean on the shore, discarding his English flag into the sea, bringing an end to this masterful amalgam of coming-of-age tale, historical drama and social document, a film that I think it's hard to argue against being considered Shane Meadows' greatest work. While Thomas Turgis, 13 at the time of filming, rightly received the lion's share of the plaudits when This Is England was released, on returning to it, it is Stephen Graham's performance that I find most compelling. He is believably menacing and dangerous, despite his stature, but in both writing and performance, Combo is so much more than a simple thug, and Graham shows him as a confused, lost and conflicted person, unable to contain a violent nature. He's a terrible person, naturally, and nothing excuses his actions, but Graham shows that Combo can't simply be explained as racist scumbag. Something made him that way, and we can begin to guess at it through the portrayal. It's really a very powerful performance, and also one that can't have been easy. Graham's father was half Jamaican, and he's talked before about the abuse he received as a child due to that. Like the Clash song with which the film shares its name, this is not a positive and hopeful vision of its creator's home nation, and it is, to be frank, bloody bleak. It is, however, superb, and something I recommend very highly indeed. In common with a lot of the director's other work, though, it's not quite as entirely downbeat as you might think, and there's really more than a minor note of hope contained within for people, at least as individuals, if not in the collective. Powerful stuff.
This was a hell of a film 15 years ago, and it's still a hell of a film, and it's almost a trope to say it's more powerful now than the time it was released, but it probably is.
I don't know about more powerful, but as powerful.
Yeah, it's...
And then you see things like the aftermath of England's defeat in semi-finals, the Euro 2020.
Yeah.
You know, the hideous racist outpour that came off that, like, it still is relevant.
It never stopped being relevant, but I think for a while back when this came out, there was... the more privileged of us could at least perhaps attempt to convince ourselves that this sort of thing was in the past, whereas the recent events have shown that that's not been quite the case.
We're in a post-racist future.
Yeah, no.
We're swiftly disabused of that notion, unfortunately.
No. I also agree. Going back to this and watching this, I hadn't seen this since its release in the cinemas, and Stephen Graham's performance really does stand out. I'd also recently seen him in I guess it's a made for TV film Help, based around the COVID, the kind of start of lockdown, care home COVID thing.
With your Killing Eve woman in it.
Yeah, and he's incredible in that, which is another very powerful work that we might get to talk about at some point. But he's incredible in this, and he's been good in a lot of things. It's also nice to see, or to go back and see a performance by Joe Gilgun's Woody. That whole early sort of first, maybe in half an hour, where it's kind of like, skinheads as a positive force, which you kind of forget about because it's been, so co-opted by a national front.
Co-opted, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. It was a cultural thing, sort of like a counterculture movement almost in Britain in particular.
Mods or rockers or whatever, anything like that.
Associated with Jamaican music and particularly black music.
Yeah,
it's like there was nothing racist about it to begin with.
Exactly.
It was a purposely inclusive movement that got hijacked, basically.
Yeah, which is what makes that scene when, Stephen Graham, when Combo snaps and beats up Milky, because all of the previous part of that is about how, those original skinheads were behaving and how inclusive they were and how it was a way of joining the kind of various working class experiences that we all have together to form closer bonds rather than to separate them and other people, the way that it had became later on, and the way that kind of Combo eventually succumbs to along with his prison mates and whatnot. It's a really interesting revisiting that kind of almost dichotomy of how it used to be and how it changed. And a hell of a performance as well from Thomas Turgoose, as we all say. It's certainly Meadows' most strongly plotted film. The narrative in this is, really strong, at the same time as all the characters still feel very real and believable, sadly, in a number of instances. But a lot of it is still incredibly powerful to this day. An absolutely exhilarating watch. And again, I completely agree, as you say. If you just hear the capsule review of this, you would think it would be an absolutely miserable experience, but no, a lot of it is actually really quite joyful. That whole first half hour is, almost from a different film. It's an incredibly positive experience for a lot of that, and quite funny for all of it, with characters that felt kind of real and relatable, who then become corrupted by this poison that is force fed to them at points. And
even the end though as well, Scott. It's not just that, the real hopeful message is that Sean discards this horrible ideology, and that also it's like his innocence isn't completely corrupted because he's seen just before that final scene, seen very much as a child again.
Yeah, when
his mum's telling him, Milky will be okay, and he's thinking about his dad and stuff. It's like, there's hope for humanity in there.
Yeah,
that this isn't irreversible either. Any idiot that gets involved in this, can go back.
Yeah. And I mean, look, we're saying idiots. It's this film is also doing a really good job of showing how people can become indoctrinated into this. Part of it was just being. To a degree, Woody indoctrinates Tommy Turgoose, Sean, into the group in the first place, but that's not really indoctrination. Rather than just being a friend, reaching out, helping people, but taking that same impulse as to why someone would be receptive to being helped out. If you're helping someone out with an ulterior motive, as soon becomes apparent from what Combo's trying to do and getting people into the National Front, it's easy to see how you could be drawn into that if you're just if someone catches you on that bad day. Where you would be more receptive to something like this, and it's in that regard kind of terrifying. If your guard's down, if you're all your luck, it's easy to see how you could be suckered into this vortex of hatred.
It's not even just that. So it's like the film helps you understand too. If someone feels himself in a sort of hopeless situation. Mm-hmm. And humans, for basically the entire history of being humans, have othered people. Yeah. Tribalism and trying to make other people sort of the enemy or something. And particularly the setting of this film, huge unemployment, there's a war going on, there's, real discontentment, there's Margaret Thatcher, so really, that's the enemy you should be going really against because Margaret Thatcher. head of the evil team as she was back then. Yeah, like, the people are kind of lashing out. They're at a loss. They're despondent. They don't have economic opportunities. They feel lost, stuck. So they lash out at the immigrants and stuff, and it's not acceptable, but it's perhaps understandable. And then, yes, you see people like Combo and particularly Frank Harper's character, the National Front candidate there, like weaponize that for their own ends. And people are not necessarily feeling that themselves, but they're like, no, these are the results of the causes of your ills. It's like, so that, I think the film does a really good job of showing that.
Yeah.
So I twice I've interrupted you now, Scott, so I haven't completely broken your flow. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not sure I've got anything much more to say about that other than to recommend it as highly as I possibly can. I agree. Probably Meadows' best film. A hell of a work. To my shame, I've not seen any of the television series that he's went on to produce based on This Is England, but I'll have to get round to that.
I had been going to ask if either of you had seen it, because I specifically avoided it because of the in general dislike sequels, and I thought, oh, really? And the film had been so good. But going back to watching, realising it's still so good, and the fact that a lot of the characters come back, including Stephen Graham, I think I might want to check that out now.
Yeah, I intend to. I mean, given the reception that those series got, and his other ones like The Virtues, I think was probably the only other significant one. They all seem to be quite well received. So, yes, something I will pick up for them, but can't comment on just now.
I have nothing further to add. This is just kind of the final coming together of the last piece, I think, with it being a little bit more purposely plotted. Everything just coheres into a really excellent whole with this film. And this is obviously the film that really got him profile, and for which he will be most remembered, I suspect, assuming that he doesn't come back to film, which I kind of feel like now would be a really great time for you to come back to film and tell us all an important lesson, Shane.
At the same time, Craig, now is not a bad time to be in TV instead. It's not,
absolutely. Yeah, it's
not the downgrade that would have felt like in the past.
No, absolutely. So you can perhaps understand why he's decided to pursue that avenue. But I do hope he comes back to film someday. But I mean, it's hard to imagine making something that would be, iconic is a word that people throw around far too easily these days. But I feel like this is pretty close to it.
Yeah.
I'd like to come back to Stephen Graham once again. Like, perhaps you don't remember this, Craig. I don't know, but honestly, I trust my memory more than yours. But I know you were quite negative about Stephen Graham in the past, and I felt sort of similarly, not quite strong, I think, but similarly. And I changed my mind kind of round about the time he was in Boardwalk Empire.
Yeah.
And then going back now, it's like that Stephen Graham's actually a really good actor.
And always has been. Yep.
Where that sort of negative feeling came from. And I do remember it. But go back now, and in particular in this film, it's like, oh, Jesus, actually, no, he's really powerful. He's a hell of an actor.
He really is. And you know, my favourite piece of work by Stephen Graham is when he was on CBeebies Bedtime Stories. And along with...
It's not about the Germans.
No, it's not. It's not. And along with Tom Hardy's reading of, what was the good one? Tom Hardy did a fantastic one. You Must Bring a Hat.
I remember Tom Hardy got on the CBeebies doing the bedtime story. Yeah,
there's a couple. He did a couple, and I think the second and third ones weren't great. But his first one, You Must Bring a Hat, I think the book is called, was phenomenal. And Stephen Graham's reading is phenomenal. He's such cheery, likeable guy in person, in such stark contrast to so many of the characters he played. And I don't know if it was just maybe his sort of typecasting early on that sort of really put me off him. But
you do remember it then?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But understanding his range now, like I've done a complete 180 on the guy, and I feel a bit silly for not appreciating that sooner.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
It's Boardwalk Empire for me that kind of changed my mind. He's playing Al Capone in Boardwalk Empire.
Yeah.
A series I really like. I think it's really good in that. It's kind of backfilled everything for me, and then going back to this thing, I was like, oh, actually, Jesus.
Yeah.
As much as I said, Thomas Turgus got so much praise. It was good because he was 13 at the time. He was a cocky wee bastard, apparently, by all accounts. You know, he was demanding money for his audition. He'd been kicked out of his own school play because of bad behaviour. And he's great, and I really like him. But no, it's Stephen Graham that's the real, like, the rock of this film.
Yeah. You're right.
He's not just simply a racist thug or something like that. There's so much more going on there.
I didn't watch Boardwalk Empire until long after it had initially screened and stuff. But maybe if I had seen that, my opinion might have turned sooner. I don't know, because in that, like, yes, he's playing ostensibly a bad guy, but his relationship with his son, in that in particular, really humanises him. Yeah,
yeah.
He's right up there in my estimation now, and I kind of look forward to seeing him any time I see his name in a film or TV series.
Yeah, I mean, because even going back, like, so we have a putative Guy Ritchie episode in the works in the background, and so I've been watching some of those again, and Tommy's kind of joke character, but you still feel like compelling even in like smaller roles like that, Tommy and Snatch. So yeah, I really like Stephen Graham, and what I'd heard him on fairly recently, I think, was Desert Island Discs and Radio 4. But he was talking about abuse he received because he's half Jamaican, half Swedish, I believe.
Right.
And even though he quite clearly looks very white, which is why he was able to play this roles like Al Capone, but like he suffered like horrendous abuse as a kid in the 70s growing up, early 80s. So it's a really bold move to take this role. That must have been really difficult for him.
Yeah.
So just like on a personal note, it's like, Jesus, like all the kudos to you for taking on the show, because that can't have been easy. And then the bonus is like the role, his performance is particularly good.
Aye.